Julie's here.
All right, so let's get started so you guys can enjoy some of this beautiful day that we have in front of us. All right, so again, welcome back. You guys, this is our last committee meeting of the year. Really, we'll go through kind of plan performance. I think the Hastings team will talk a little about open enrollment and how that kind of shakes, because I didn't see an agenda come through, so I'm not sure if there was one that was delivered to others and not to me, but that's fine. Jenny, it sounds like you're talking, but you don't have a microphone. Nope, can't hear you. So you have to use your sign language now. Okay.
I can forward you the.
That's fine. If everybody else got it, then we're good. I know that normally we talk about open enrollment, and I didn't know if there was other things on the agenda for today. So we'll talk through the plan. We've got a few things to just kind of update you as well. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has created some changes to some of the spend, and we'll kind of highlight and illustrate kind of where we're seeing some of that happening within the plans. So let's kind of get jumping into this. So slide 4, as you guys know, we show on the left side of the document kind of how the plan is performing around funding and how that compares to expected costs, max costs, and where we're funding. And you'll see that we're at $5.8 million through the month of April. April's expenses were about $440,000, so we weren't really far off of where we have been. So we've seen, for surely, some plans starting to see some of the slowdown in April, right? We're not seeing that as much with your plan. Your plan's roughly been, unfortunately around that $500 and some thousand range. So it's slightly down, but it's not down hundreds of thousands of dollars like we would anticipate in the understanding that non-essential care, so preventative care, all those kinds of things were basically stopped at the end of March. So for most plans, there's been some sort of a slowdown. We haven't seen that, partly because we have individuals that are turning towards that stop loss. We have some individuals that are going through some higher cost things, and those individuals were still able to visit hospitals, do chemotherapy, those sorts of necessary things. So when we're looking at this or comparing this to what we might see on some other groups have seen a little bit of a bigger slowdown in the month of April than you guys have seen. So again, $444,000 in the month of April, 5.8 in total. When we look at kind of our claim spend year to date is up about $580,000. So definitely it is a little bit of a higher spend year. And we knew that when we were looking at kind of where we were setting rates, what our reserve looked like, and this idea that, yeah, we have a nice reserve position, but we also know that our plan has been spending more, so let's take a small increase just to kind of hedge our bets on that. So I still think that was a good thing to do as we're kind of preparing, for this end of the year. And especially now that things are starting to lighten up a little bit in the sense that we can go back in, have preventative care. Members will start to incur expenses again as well. So we didn't get a win as much as maybe some other plans have seen. Looking at April, again, 96% of claims to expected. Where we're looking at last year, we're about 94%. So it did come down. You can see there has been some reduction over the last couple of months. So things have slowed down a little bit, but we didn't get this huge win by people not being able to go in. That's kind of evident when you look at this part of the page here, right? So when we're looking at this and we kind of compare where we were last year we had 3 individuals on this list through April. Those 3 individuals generated about $450,000 worth of spend, or 9.4% of the overall spend. So 6 individuals now, 2 of them over stop loss. This is what's really kind of driving our extra spend as we're kind of looking at this year. And we'll talk through some of that predictive stuff as well. I believe that's actually on this slide. So I'll have Alex talk through this. This is going to be a different look for what you have seen before. So this is that Springbuk data, looking at that stop loss and what those high case individuals look like. And I'll let Alex kind of orient you to this new slide.
Sure. We're really excited about the changes we've got here. What we've done with the data is incorporated what's going on with the current plan year as well. So historically, we had a gray bar and a green bar. Gray was past 12 months, green was future 12 months, but we didn't really talk about it in the context of how that individual was running for the current year as well. So I think adding that additional layer will help to make this more meaningful. We've got some additional details kind of on the back end that I can kind of talk through with you guys as well. But as we look at this, they're kind of, you'll see the claimant numbers are at the top now. So you've got claimant 1 through 9 on the top there. This data in terms of who's on the list is really similar to the data that we would have sent last month as well. We didn't see a lot of movement here. Where we did see quite a bit of movement in terms of what that predicted future spend will look like is around specifically behavioral health. We saw an increase in what that future spend would look like for that category specifically of almost $30,000. Similarly, blood-related conditions, that future spend also increased by about $30,000. Again, these are just for the 9 people that are on this list. Other increases we saw, neoplasms, cancers of the digestive organs, and then drugs that are used for dermatological conditions. Both of those conditions are kind of just shy of the $20,000 mark, but those were future projections that increased for this this month versus what we would have sent last month as well. So wanted to kind of orient you to what is new this month versus last month. We look at who is kind of on this page. A couple of interesting things to take away. The two that are most concerning in terms of future spend around claimant number 4, you'll see that they have a really high future spend, whereas their current plan year is pretty low. And then claimant number 7, that individual you can see is predicted to be spending significantly more than they are currently. Good news with those two is that we've seen a pretty steep decline in what their active spend has been. If we look at what they spent in the month of March, it was only about $400 for claimant number 4 and only about $100 for claimant number 7. So I think that's a good sign that hopefully whatever it is that they're going through is lessening, and we're not seeing as much of that happening. For claimants 1 and 2 that are already at or above, or I guess if we look at that orange line for the current plan year, for both of those being above the spec level, both of those did have significant claim spend in excess of either $13,000 or something thousand for those 2 individuals. Again, looking at the month of March here. Obviously, the preferred one data that George was talking about goes through April. It takes Springbuk an extra month to sort of process their data, so that's why we're talking about different time periods here. But a few interesting takeaways there. I think the good news is that claimant 4 and 7 that do have those higher future spend predictions are slowing down a bit. Claimant 1 and 2 unfortunately continue to be high spend, so we'll see those continue. As we look towards next year, kind of as we get closer to this sort of close of the plan year, it does still appear that we'll have about 6 individuals that we're projecting to be on that high claimant list at 50% or greater. I guess one other quick note to kind of tie into what George had mentioned around the high claimant list being so much longer this year than it was last year. A couple of these individuals are dealing with conditions that are really unexpected and that we didn't really see coming. A cancer diagnosis in an individual that is very, very young, and then also an individual that is new to the plan in that they are very young, also unfortunately being on this list as well. So I think those two really contribute to sort of this unexpected change in what had kind of been a standard. We see the same people on the list year over year. These 2 people are really, really part of what kind of swung that number in the direction that we saw this year.
So Alex, just to clarify, so it's claimant 4, 8, and 9 are the ones that aren't on the screen before because they haven't reached 100,000, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And we don't have any way of knowing if we think like maybe 3 or 5 might reach the $200,000 mark before the plan year ends.
3 and 5.
Yeah. Just they look like they're the highest so far, and we only have a couple months left. But
Yep. So 3, I
Three,
don't
probably.
believe
Yeah.
so.
Because of future here.
right, so 3 has a really
Small chance of adding to
Forecast.
this.
Okay.
Yeah. So if this is
Yep.
our current
got
year,
it.
and we take this and we drop it on top of
The
it,
next 12, got it.
Yep.
obviously we don't know when the spend's going to happen, but if we were to assume it's all going to
Sure.
happen between now and the end of the year, they wouldn't get to the 200 level.
Thanks. Just
But
because this
looking-
is new, so I'm just
Yep.
trying to
Yep,
navigate.
absolutely. And the individual number 3 is really more of an episodic issue. I don't foresee them being on the high claim list going forward. And that corresponds obviously to the future 12-month prediction being so low. In terms of claimant 8, I believe was that the right one, or was it 5? Was it 8? That individual I would see as potentially getting to the $100,000 mark, if not greater, just because they're spending about $8,000 a month on RX, and we've got a couple months left in the year,
Wow.
right? So they could certainly get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
8,000. Okay.
Yeah, and especially in March, because this data doesn't include, if this data doesn't include March, we definitely seen with some plans have a higher spend because of this fear of shutdown, that people went to get prescriptions filled, and a lot of the pharmacy controls were lightened up to allow that, so that people were able to go in, so we didn't have the toilet paper issue, so that they could actually go in, get their meds, and have those in the event that they weren't able to leave their home for a period of time. So we definitely did see some individuals that might have had to wait a little bit longer to get a prescription filled, actually were able to get them again. And I think it's a good thing. It probably helped to control some anxieties and things of that nature as well, and didn't create other issues. But again, we'll probably see this look a little bit differently as we, look at as March kind of data gets brought into this as well.
Yep. It is data through 3/31.
Okay.
All right.
Other questions on this slide? All right. So then slide 7 is again, the performance we're looking at through those 10 months. So you can kind of see what's happening around enrollment, really a small increase overall. And we've shown this month over month. So not a whole lot of change. We do have more subscribers and a few more belly buttons overall on the plan. Claim spend though, so we go from up 10% and then still we're up 12%. And again, this is also with a little bit of a lower month. So we still are, at a pretty high clip for us as a plan, right? We haven't seen these double-digit claim spend increases over multiple years. So we're still seeing this. When we normalize that based upon our overall population changes as well, so we gotta take into consideration what those more belly buttons mean. Still 8% year over year in terms of that increase. If we're thinking about medical trend, and we've talked about this before, 6.5 to 8%, we're kind of at the higher end of that in terms of what our overall increase looks like. Most of our self-insured plans, as you guys have experienced, is usually in the 4 to 6% range when we're looking at what does our change in spend look like year over year. So for us to have 8% has definitely, started to get us to think more about where's our reserve position, making sure we don't get ourselves into an issue where we're spending all the reserve and then we're significantly under that mark. So kudos to you for thinking about making a small increase, because I think that will play as we kind of move forward. Bottom side, you can kind of see this as well, right? So look at revenue coming in for the past 10 months over each of these years. So 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, again, kind of holding rates, right? And then look what happens to that cash position through 10 months. 1.5, we're down to $1 million. So we were basically been burning about $500,000 of the surplus each year over the last 3 years based upon, this higher claim spend. So definitely, we definitely want to make sure that we're keeping ourselves funded at a level that doesn't create a huge increase for us in the future.
Hey, George, before you leave that slide,
Yeah.
could you just help me remember how you calculated the percentage rates? Like, where does
So-
negative 47% come from?
So that's we had $1 million. Now we're down to 500. So we basically lost 47% from this year to this year in terms of our reserve position for the first 10 months.
So that just compares to the year prior? Is that what
Exactly,
you're
yep.
comparing? Okay.
Yep. So it's basically saying that our cash position in this year is 40% lower than where it was last year.
was the
Because
year
last year we had
before.
$1,063,000. This year we have
Mhm.
568. And
Got
then
it.
on this side, the 2% is really probably because of the change in enrollment. So we didn't change our rates, but we have more money coming in because we have more contracts. So that creates the 2% change in the funding
Sure.
coming into the plan.
Got it. Got it.
Perfect. Other
Thank you.
questions on this before we move? All right, so Alex, you want to talk a little bit about Wellbeats? And so you guys remember that's the Netflix fitness program
Yeah, it's some sort of program.
with some sort of funky music in the background,
Yep.
which everyone
Lindy.
appreciates.
If it's any
Lindy's
consolation,
favorite.
I did share the feedback with
Oh, did you?
everyone. They were very surprised and said that they hadn't received that kind of feedback before, but that they really appreciated it. So
I'm sure. A little bit. Chicka, chicka, bow, wow.
I
Yes.
didn't tell them what group it came from. I will also just throw out that this is being recorded. So
That's why
we'll keep-
chicka, chicka.
we'll keep moving.
Thank you.
But here's some data around how Wellbeats was used during the month of March. Looking at about 17 new user accounts being created. So in total, you have 78 accounts. For the month of March, I showed that you had 139 classes completed, and those were by 14 employees that were actively using the program. So even though 17 new people signed up, not necessarily all of them, necessarily went in and completed a class. Some of them might have just been checking it out. Those employee participants could have been some of the older total user accounts as well. So we don't have kind of eyesight into who was completing the classes, but that those 139 completed classes were done by 14 unique individuals.
Okay.
I can say that 139 is a significantly larger number than what we were seeing for you guys historically. I think the next kind of biggest month that you had was about 61 classes completed in a month. So the fact that bumped up to 139 makes perfect sense because we're stuck at home in quarantine, and maybe people looking for exercise, fitness, gym memberships, whatever, they're using this as an outlet. So
Yes.
I think that's about it. I know the numbers are still, relatively low in terms of 14 people using it, but we'll continue to watch it.
And I think this is something that is being explored as to do we keep this or do we remove this as well. So definitely we'll look for your input as well in terms of do we continue. But in the state that we're in, this was kind of a thing that was added to a lot of plans. So Health Partners added to their fully insured plans, Wellbeats. Obviously, Preferred One was offering this as well. So there were health plans were trying to figure out ways to kind of meet the member, right? So because you couldn't go to the club. So this did provide that avenue for some individuals in that time of need. ClearScript, so there's not a lot to report here. We don't have another refresh around the claim spend for prescriptions for the month of March, so we will update this. My guess is that this will probably look a little bit larger in March, again, partly because of this COVID idea of me going and getting prescriptions filled to help with that. As Alex had mentioned, we do have a few individuals that are incurring a pretty large dollar values to some of those specialty drugs. We might see those values start to increase as well. So we'll continue to watch to see how this plays for the remainder of the year as well.
It makes me still nervous though.
In what respect?
Well, because we're still through we're still what, 28,000 down, and we still would have to add.
No, yeah, so let's back up. We're actually only 7,500 down because this is looking at it with all the months of admin credits. but we don't have any claim spend for March or April. So if you look at it in terms of where we are through February, we're $7,500 negative.
Mhm.
And remember, this is based upon these values. There is a settlement as well in terms of looking at the discounts and things to see if there is additional funds that could come back to the plan as well. So there is going to be some sort of a reconciliation. Whether it will bridge that $7,500 gap or not is something we have to watch. Yep. But you would be the first plan that we had that didn't win on rebates if that happens to be the case. So again, I would still.
Okay, so
let's
this is
still
being
watch it.
recorded, so we have your word.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, some of what's not reflected in that win-loss number is the preferred contracting that you received as part of doing sort of this PBM RFP, right? You had lower dispensing fees and better discounts on the drugs themselves that are going into this contract, but that's not a number that we can just readily kind of get and put in this like sort of checkbook register, if you will. So that's part of it. The other part of it too, and I can dig into the Springbuk data to see if sort of the prevalence of some of these brand name drugs are going down, because some of the reason we're not winning might be that we're using less drugs than we did last year when we did this calculation. I don't know if that's the case. I doubt it since our claim spend is up 8%. But I think that could also be part of it.
Other questions on this slide? Okay. So we got an Omada update. Alex, you want to talk through? There we go, slide 11.
Sure. So I believe this. So yep, this data is as of 5/11, and I did just get new data through 5/18. We sent this deck out to you guys before the end of last week. So we do have a bit of new information compared to this. It looks like the numbers do still line up. So we've got 39 people that are enrolled in the plan, still 52 having applied, 43 being accepted. So you have an acceptance rate of 83%. And so of those that were accepted, 91% of them then enrolled in the program. I can tell you from the data that of those 39, we do have 2 accounts that have been disabled. So that's two individuals that decided maybe that the program wasn't right for them, that maybe Omada doesn't kind of meet me where I'm trying to go with health goals. Of the rest of the people kind of in working through the program, there are 23 that are somewhere between weeks 9 and 16. And then you have 14 individuals that have now crossed the threshold of now being in week 17 plus.
That's me.
Congratulations. So what's great about that is that as we see that population of individuals in kind of the focus program increase, once we get to 30 individuals that are at week 17 plus, we will get a new set of reports from Omada. And I'm really excited about that, because what that will do then is show us sort of the total weight loss for those individuals. Not individuals, but like for the
Group.
No, it'll be individually. We're
large.
Oh, is it?
going to
Thank you.
publish everybody's numbers.
Please
I
do.
was trying to clarify. So it'll be, so for this whole group, they've lost, X pounds, and then it'll break it out like, these 5 people lost more than 10% of their body weight, and that reduced their risk of future chronic conditions by more than 75%, or whatever those numbers are. It'll get really granular as sort of an aggregate group, and I'm excited to see what that looks like. And we'll kind of come back with what that deep dive looks like. But again, the threshold for getting that data is 30 people that make it to the focus population. So I would say within the next couple of weeks, we should get really close to that. So hopefully we'll definitely have that data the next time we get together.
Is enrollment still open for this? Do you know?
It is
It's always open.
It's always open. I'm wondering if we could, like when the link first came out, and maybe Jenny remembers this, because when I was trying to get in it wouldn't let me in or something on that one link, and then I just honestly kind of forgot about it. So I was just curious if there was some way we could promote it again and see if, since we're all
Staying home.
quarantining 15.
No, not all.
Well, yes. Well, good for you. So actually, that'll make our numbers look good because now we've chunked up a little
Oh.
and we get on the program and success.
I don't know if that's how that's supposed to work.
We've added our COVID-19. Nice.
We have definitely seen an increase in enrollment for some other groups that have tried to sort of not capitalize, but make this program sort of remind people in this time, because it's not just eating right and exercise, it's also sleep and stress, which if those aren't two of your biggest sort of issues today, I don't know what are.
Right.
So absolutely. But I think, Jen, I see you turned your camera there and you've got Jenny in the room with you.
I do.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I'll resend it, Lori. My link didn't work either. And I remember I think I ended up having to do it on my cell phone or something weird.
I think that was it. I was trying to do it on my phone or was doing it on a Chromebook and it wasn't working or something.
Yeah. Some people had that problem and some people got in fine. But I'll resend it, kind of like a little relaunch.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want any sort of new marketing material from Omada, I know that they're more than happy to partner with you if there's like a specific message you're looking for, or if it's, quarantine specific, or, just kind of being home more and what those new temptations and habits look like. I know that they can certainly help craft what that looks like. And George and I'd be happy to help coordinate with that with you guys if there's anything we can do to help.
Are any of the other districts that you're working with using the other Omada products?
So to your point, I believe you're talking about the type 2 diabetes specific program, and then there's a hypertension specific program.
Correct.
So
I mean, especially now where Corona has made that high risk issue a bigger issue for people.
Absolutely. So most of the carriers most of the groups we work with are not engaging in that step in the program. The reason for that is that most of the carriers we work with haven't actually sort of launched that program or approved that portion of the program until just, I think, like January, February of this year. So it's very new and we haven't seen a lot of people roll that out yet. That said, a lot of districts that have had a lot of really great success with the prevention program are, saying, this has been really great. Let's see what these other programs look like. So if that's something that you guys are interested in, we can certainly bring sort of that demo forward and talk about what the cost impact might look and feel like, because it is more expensive than the preventive program. Part of that being you get different equipment than what you would get for the preventive program. So I can make a note of that, and we can certainly circle back on those two programs. So I think we talked about all of these items here. We can kind of keep moving.
Okay. So slide 14, looking at the dental plan, and let me put my annotation back on. So you'll see here, we did start to see the impacts of COVID-19 on the dental plan, though, for sure. So when we look at our dental plan for the month of April, we had $5,500 in spend. So normally prior Aprils have been like 42 and 48,000. So definitely a reduction in dental spend. And we've talked a lot about this with other groups in terms of, will people try to get back in to get if they missed a 6 month, will they do something to try to get back in, or will they just say, oh, hell with it, I'll wait until my normal next 6 months? So we may or may not see, a flood of people coming back on to the dental spend, right? So that might just be a little bit of a win for us for the month of April, and then probably part of most of May as well, because again, the stay-at-home order really just started to get lifted here for some of those dental providers. So they're getting themselves prepared to take on patients again. So we would anticipate May spend to be low again. You guys are a school, so more than likely your spend happens over the summer anyway, so you might not have had much of a change around kind of the behavior, but we did definitely see some reduction in dental spend in the month of April. And you can kind of see that as well when we look at slide 15 around where things are at. So claim spend down from 500,000 to 450. Again, the large majority of that is the idea that we really didn't have very much spend in the month of April. Normalize that as well. If we bring this back, we're pretty close to being just shy of where we were last year as well. So overall, the plan is pretty much stable. We're seeing a win, or we're seeing a reduction in spend, really just because we've had April, and we'll probably have that in May as well in terms of that slight reduction. But those are still good things, because if we were fully insured, not all the carriers, Delta so far is not offering any sort of credit or issue back to members. So being self-insured, the money stays with us. We're able to say, hey, we win from that. So that means we don't have to have an increase, in a future year. So another good reason to be self-insured on those plans.
Well, George, just for your information, my dentist office just rescheduled. Ooh, why do I sound terrible? My dentist office just rescheduled my appointment that was missed in March.
Yeah. So trying to get
So
you
they're
back in.
kicking in. Yep.
Well, they want you back because they've lost the revenue. So the issue is will you say, yeah, I'll come back, or I'll wait until when's my next 6 months supposed to be, and I'll get in then, right? So
Yep. No, I'm going back.
Yep.
I'm going in.
Yep. So any other questions on the dental? So we got a couple of slides, again, newer slides around kind of some of the Springbuck insights, and Alex can kind of talk through some highlights that are on these next couple of slides.
Sure. So this is part of sort of that data refresh and kind of repackaging that we have been working on behind the scenes for you guys. The hopes here is that we would get you some more actionable information than what had historically been provided. Before, it was just a couple of small little tidbits of information, but not a lot of detail behind how those numbers came together. So the hope here is that this is going to be better, more robust, more meaningful data. What we're looking at here, you'll notice we have the same sort of information in the top left corner around the number of members that are non-compliant with their preventive care, what that percentage looks like, and the same kind of donut chart there around who those members are, who's non-compliant, with purple being the dependents, the kind of that pinkish color being spouses, and then blue being employees. So what's new then is sort of the lower left and then the right-hand side. Historically, what we had done is just brought forward the items that are now on the right-hand side of the page that had the largest number of non-compliant. Instead now, we're gonna kind of draw out what those bigger categories are. For example, preventive care specific to women, what's sort of the overall compliance for those big categories. And then we're gonna dive in on the right-hand side with what specific measures make up those different categories. It isn't all of the measures. Honestly, there's dozens of them. And so what we're doing is just grabbing the ones that you'll see kind of in that on that title section there, gaps with most non-compliant members. So you know where those needs are. So what we've done here on the left, we've got preventive, just general preventive care being the top category. This was true for you guys historically as well. So you have 273 non-compliant members of your 809 total members, and then calculating out what those compliance percentages are for all of those categories, kind of working down the list. What I like about this new format is that you can see all of those categories instead of only the categories with the biggest members or biggest populations of non-compliant. So it gives you a little bit more visibility into that. If we then look on the right-hand side, and these are those measures where we do have the largest amount of non-compliance, right? So 179 individuals are non-compliant with their colon cancer screening. What's interesting is that you'll now be able to see what that compliance percentage is. You'll see we've got 37% there, versus historically we only showed you what the number was. We would have only said 179 members are non-compliant without actually doing the calculation of so how many should be in this category. And you'll see based on the different, this isn't just age, it's also specific to health conditions and that kind of thing, but it does identify that, for example, in that first one, 282 individuals should be getting that screening, 179 have not. So that's sort of where we get those numbers and those calculations from. So Working down the list, just to kind of refresh you from where we were last month, very similar again, colon cancer screening continues to be number 1, with cervical cancer screening being number 2, and then well child care members, dependent members that are between ages 12 and 21, getting kind of that annual exam in some shape or form is still up there at 108. So a couple of interesting things I wanted to point out. I feel like I mentioned that colon cancer screening is number 1 every time we meet. A few interesting stats on that I pulled kind of before we met here. For that 179 members that are non-compliant, 65% of them are employees. So if we're kind of measuring, is this worth discussing? Do we do a campaign? Do we remind people that this is a screening they should get? You do have more people that are kind of readily available to you as employees to receive that communication. 57% of those that are non-compliant are female. So majority female, which again makes sense with a workforce there at the district that is primarily female. And what I thought was also interesting is, if we've talked about this before, there's a potential that some of these might be false positives in that they're actually compliant, but they're showing as non-compliant because of the limited data set I have. I have 5 years worth of data, but if they got colon cancer screening 5 years prior to that, they could still potentially be compliant. What I do know for a fact is that 27% of those 179 individuals are in fact real and true non-compliant individuals, because they're between the ages of 50 and 55. So those are so those are people that really and truly should. We know that if they would have gotten it, it would have showed up in my data, right? With the exception maybe being that they're an employee that wasn't on the plan 5 years ago, a new employee that was just hired a year ago or something. So I'll stop caveating the data to make you question it. But those are some of the sort of interesting takeaways about at least the colon cancer screening, for example. And it's a weird one to mention, I know, but guys, this is 3% of your annual spend goes towards colon cancer screenings alone. So like this is a big money topic, and it's one that can prevent a lot of future claim spend and also help with the health and well-being of our population. So I mention it with good reason. If we move on then to slide 18, this one is our new chronic condition slide. This one's gonna look really similar to the slide we just went over with preventive care. Again, the larger categories that you guys are familiar with seeing are on the left-hand side of the page. Those are the top 5 chronic conditions sorted by the savings opportunity. That is what we have historically come out and spoken to you about. What we haven't done, though, is gone into the detail on the right-hand side by labeling what specifically those gaps in care are. So this data does that. The font is very small. We sent it over, so feel free to either zoom in on your own or print it off so that you can read it. But this is really identifying what some of those gaps in care are, and it's only labeling the non-compliant members. So a couple of interesting takeaways on this slide. If we look at the compliance percentages on the left, we did see some improvement. Let me get there, around drug management in the month of March here with data. If I look at what was sent out to you guys last month versus what I'm reporting this month, drug management actually improved by a couple of percentage points. I think that goes to George's point that a lot of individuals were sort of stocking up on drugs with the assumption that they wouldn't be able to go out or get to the pharmacy or maybe get the prescription they needed at that point in time. So seeing that percentage improve, I think is excellent. Unfortunately, a couple of other measures actually decrease. If we look at compliance with in terms of diabetes, and then compliance in terms of coronary artery disease, that's what CAD stands for. Those both decreased slightly. We'll watch that. We haven't seen a lot of issues with members not being able to stay compliant with their chronic conditions because of these stay-at-home orders, but that has been sort of a worry or a concern. So we'll continue to watch it, but just slight percentage changes in those two categories. Any questions before we move on? All right, perfect. So then looking at slide 19, this again, a couple of our insight cards, details that you guys can take away and review at your own leisure. One item I do want to spend a little time on is that lower right corner. If we look at preference sensitive conditions, These are surgeries that can be elective or maybe not emergency, right? You can choose where you're going. Knee or hip replacement being the one that we usually talk about. So as these stay-at-home orders are lifted, one of the things we're going to be watching for, is there a big pent-up demand of these knee and hip replacement surgeries that either were scheduled over the stay-at-home order and needed to be rescheduled, or maybe, you know, members looking for ways to sort of you know, use those flex dollars that they might have, or what have you. Just being cognizant that we might see all of a sudden this big spike in these elective surgeries come kind of you know, June, as members can get back to access those procedures. I think it's really important to sort of grab this captive audience before they choose where it is that they'll be going to get those procedures. I know that Preferred One does have a price shopper tool in their member portal. If you guys are looking for any material to get out to your bargaining groups and let them know about that tool and how to access it, we're more than happy to provide that to you guys. If I look at your claims data, something like a knee replacement can range anywhere from $20,000 to $49,000, right? Some of that might be due to sort of the severity of the issue, but a lot of it honestly is just, do I go to the hospital down the street, or do I go to the hospital across town? And it could be the same exact procedure, but the cost differential can be so substantial that there isn't really rhyme or reason for it.
Can I ask a quick question? Just, I don't know what the word means. Top low acuity visits. Top low, that just doesn't make sense. And I'm not sure I know what acuity means.
Sure. So what this is saying is that an individual went into the ER and saw a specialist or a physician when it's something that a nurse practitioner could have seen. So acuity is referencing sort of the level of difficulty or sort of the advanced medical professional that you're seeking. It would be like seeing, you know, a physician for an ear infection you could talk to a nurse practitioner about on Virtual, or something like that. So, so it's, we're paying more for the professional than we necessarily need to.
Yep, calculus teacher helping you with math, with arithmetic.
Gotcha. Thank you, George.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so last slide, I think, maybe. I think this is it. Okay, guys, we're almost off the hook. Sunshine is like just around the corner. Looking at what our plan year to date spend looks like for the first 10 months here with Preferred One versus the first 10 months of the last year. Where this is different than what George had talked about earlier, again, we're breaking this out by category. The other difference is that all of the high claimants above your $200,000 spec level are still included in this measurement. So it can be swayed a bit by those high claimants, right? Where we might see that is going to be places like hospital inpatient. Surprisingly, though, your hospital inpatient is down in the most recent plan year versus the 10 months prior. The reason I say surprisingly is that, as George mentioned, you do have a much longer high claimant list this year than you did at this point last year. So I would have actually expected that to be the other way around. Where we are seeing increased spend is hospital outpatient, and then the RX as well, if we just look at those individual categories. I think at the end of the day, the most important part of the slide, which George is mentioning or kind of drawing out there with his little red pointer, is that your claim spend in total is up 9 percentage points. Again, this is different than the last page we looked at because it includes those high claimants, versus if we remove those high claimants, or at least their spend above 200,000, then the sort of year-over-year differential is 8%.
Okay. So I think with that on the agenda, I know that Jennifer had a few things to go over, the accounting and open enrollments and things like that. So I can stop sharing this screen.
George, what does PCORI stand for again?
Yeah, so that is Patients Centers for Outcome Research. So as part of the Affordable Care Act, that all health plans contribute a small dollar value per person to a federal government agency that then kind of looks at making sure that the right protocols and things are in place so that we try to reduce some of the waste in healthcare.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, can you guys see the open enrollment summary?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'll let Jenny talk through that.
Okay. So I just kind of highlighted over like what the bigger changes were. We did not get any new enrollees onto either of our comp basic plans this year. But we had a total of 10 plan changes. 3 individuals moved from comp basic family to Viva family.
Yeah.
4 individuals from comp basic single to Viva single. And I could tell that somebody must have been working their magic with talking to the custodians, because a couple of them
That's
moved
Jesse.
and then Viva single, we had 2 folks that moved over to family. And then we had 6 individuals that had previously waived enrollment that now are enrolling. So 2 to Viva family, 4 to Viva single.
Okay.
And then towards the bottom, I just kind of put a summary of what those numbers totaled up to thus far. I don't anticipate they'll change a whole lot. As I say, I think on the next, there we go. Next one is dental. Obviously, there's not usually a whole lot of movement on the dental plans. But 2 plan changes from single to family, and then 3 new enrollments that had previously waived, 1 to single, 2 to family. So as you can kind of see in the summary below, not a huge change in numbers at the bottom. And then on the last page, I just kind of totaled up quick and did a comparison of our enrollments for Flex. So our medical Flex was down just a little, 42 this year compared to 47 last year. And then dependent care is up a lot from 20 this year to 6 last year. And I think, I am with the open enrollment, obviously we did it different by sending it out via email and did a few reminders. I think, it was a little rough around the edges, I think, at first, but we got everything back, and for the most part, I don't think there was a whole lot of complaints. I don't know if I only hear good things maybe, but next year, if everything returns back to normal, we probably would just go about our normal way of doing it and not necessarily send it out via email again, but we'll see. Thoughts, comments, anyone?
No. Okay, so
I
then
thought it went really well for the most part for being done completely online. I know that some employees don't have regular access to their emails during their work time, so they don't access their emails. That part kind of surprised me a little bit. But other than that, I've only heard good things.
Oh, good. Well, hey, maybe, who knows, maybe next year we'll save 10 trees and do it via email again if it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. So cool. Thank you.
okay, and then just cash flow real quickly. Cash flow, there's nothing significant, no big changes there. We still have, for health, we have $2 million invested, and then there's a little bit over $2 million in cash and kind of that second level investment account. For dental, same thing. We're just fine cash flow purposes. And with that one, there's, again, 2 investments, about $500,000. And then in cash, we have about $259,000. And again, that's split between the kind of 2 different layers of investment accounts. So we're anticipating, obviously, interest will be a little bit lower at the end of the year here. But cash flow wise, we're just fine for both accounts. Oh, I don't know, Julie, did you want to do a wellness update?
Really not much to report since our last meeting because of the lockdown and so forth. I am 16 days away from retirement, so we're adding somebody. You're happy to get rid of me, Jesse?
No,
I see
it's
you.
like we're happy for you.
Oh, okay. But
Has the board approved that one yet? I'm not
I
sure.
think so. Don't mess with me, Scott.
They recommended that.
She has,
Yeah, I think so. But
has a
I
clock.
believe
I think it's coming up on this one.
Jenny Berg, I believe you are taking my place on wellness, right?
Oh,
You and Deanna? That's what Deanna's hoping anyway.
oh, well, sure.
Well, you talk it over with her, and I think you should do it. But anyway, so nothing really to report. There's been mental health stuff that's come out from the district in the Raider update and so forth. So that's there's been a lot of really good stuff there, and I would guess that Deanna has been behind a lot of that. So that's all I got.
Okay. And I think that covers our agenda. Is there any other questions or items people want to discuss?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, then I think we're done for the day
Oh, and for the year.
and for the
Happy
year.
summer,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
My question, I have one quick one, and this is for the Jens. Is Betty Ford covered by our insurance?
No,
Ford?
she's-
Ford, huh?
Friend.
Are you?
I'm
Yeah,
asking
you're
for a
asking
friend.
for a friend.
recording.
Yeah, that's
Stop
what I thought.
recording.
Stop recording.
She's not a covered
Is that like an
individual.
alcohol
Yeah.
We're not
place?
sure who she
Are
is.
liver transplants covered? Recreational use? Could I just get one like on a stand I could plug in?
All
Call
right,
us
you
after
guys.
the fact, Julie. We'll hook you up.
Okay,
Right.
let me know what you find out. I'm asking for a friend. So.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Never ceases to amaze me.
You're gonna miss me, Scott, aren't you?
I am gonna miss you terribly. I absolutely am.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Bye, you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Thank you guys. It's beautiful outside. Go outside.